What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Kakis, and today we are going to be discussing the things that are going to be absolutely busted, bonkers, beast mode, as the kids would say, bussin', oh sheesh, in the upcoming Season of the Wish just about to launch within Destiny 2. And how we're doing this is that recently Bungie released an absolutely massive update detailing a ton of different changes coming next season, as well as revealing all of the new seasonal artifact perks that are going to be introduced with Season of the Wish. So we can just see which one of those things combined with the announced buffs and nerfs are going to combine to produce absolutely potentially broken combos. So let's get started here by talking about Solar. It was supposed to be a season where stasis was a featured element, and it technically is, but honestly, judging from what we've seen, Solar seems to be taking the cake. However, there are some significant nerfs to some of the best solar things out there, and we have to discuss the elephant in the room. One of the best solar builds in the game, certainly for PvE, is the Bonk Hammer Titan, and that unfortunately caught a pretty big nerf. As you can see right here, instead of instantly getting your hammer back after throwing it, and so letting you be able to stand in front of a boss and just throw, catch, throw, catch, throw for a ton of damage, now that melee energy is going to return over 1.4 seconds. So it's throw, 1.4, got it, throw, 1 point, got it, throw. It is going to significantly reduce your damage output. Now, to what degree is the build still going to be viable? I don't really know, but it's combined with another nerf to Sol Invictus, reducing the amount of time you can stand in those sunspots, and the Syntheseps, the main exotic you would use in that build, are also catching a nerf. They're not going to improve your melee damage by as much. So that build may need to find an alternative for next season. However, you still have, the Dawnblade Warlock, even though the charge rate of your Well of Radiance is going to increase slightly, it's still going to be absolutely incredible, and Solar Hunter as well is pretty much untouched. So, despite these nerfs, why am I saying that Solar is going to absolutely pop off next season? Well, let's take a look at the bonkers new seasonal artifact perks that affect it. First of all, in column 2, you have Kindling Trigger. Radiant causes solar weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. So, as long as you're Radiant, every enemy you shoot will then light up with Scorch and take extra tick damage, significantly improving your DPS, and there's so many Scorch synergies within solar builds. We're going to get to those in a second, but you really don't actually need to build into this too much. In fact, you can use this combo on a completely different element of build. You can use this on a stasis build because you can just use another new seasonal artifact perk in column 3, Flint Striker. Rapid solar weapons precision hits and rapid solar weapon final blows grant radiant. What? So that is a 2 perk combo there. You are just using solar weapons, that's the only requirement, and then as you're getting rapid precision hits with them, you are becoming radiant, and then as you're becoming radiant, you're causing Scorch. Like, that's all you need. You just need those 2 artifact perks, and you're scorching everything and giving yourself constant radiant, which boosts your weapon damage as well. What an incredible combo. However, guys, we can take a look at some of the elements of solar builds and really increase the potency of these perks. First of all, you can throw on something like Ember of Ashes to improve the amount of Scorch stacks you apply to targets. And that's huge because the more Scorch stacks you have on a target, once it reaches 100 stacks, it will then explode with an ignition. But also, you have a bunch of ways to easily become radiant. One of the best ways by far is Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. This is one of the best fragments in the game. You just need to get a hit with your powered melee and boom, you're radiant, and now you're scorching, and then, you're using the other fragment to scorch for even more, right? That is absolutely incredible. You also have Ember of Solace. Radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. So now you're radiant for longer, you're applying more scorch. This is fantastic. But guys, why stop there? You can use Ember of Tempering, where solar weapon final blows, which you're radiant and you're scorching everything, of course you're going to get a ton of final blows, grant you and your allies increased recovery for a short duration. And while this is active, your weapons have an increased airborne effectiveness, and more importantly, your solar weapon final blows will create a fire sprite, and if you pick up a fire sprite, that grants additional grenade energy. In fact, there's another thing here, Ember of Mercy, where picking up a fire sprite grants restoration. So now, just with 2 of the seasonal artifact perks and a couple of different fragments, you now have it where getting or just using solar weapons next season will be giving you radiant, it will be causing scorch, it will be increasing your recovery, it will be spawning fire sprites, which is going to give you more grenade energy and restoration. So you're going to be constantly healing and dealing a ton more damage, guys. Absolute insanity. But this is actually just the beginning. If we continue forward, guys, we have even more new seasonal artifact perks that affect solar, including Revitalizing Blast. Causing damage with a solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. So, you don't need a tractor cannon, right? You don't need someone to use tether. You just hit them with a celestial fire from across the map. That is a solar ability. You just need to cause damage. You have now applied a weaken effect to that boss. And then you absolutely go to town with your boosted to the gills solar weapons. Incredible. But there's actually more, and really the finale here for solar certainly is going to be the final column 5 perk, Rays of Precision. While radiant, solar precision final blows cause combatants to ignite. Ignition is incredibly powerful, guys. If you've ever used the conditional finality raid shotgun, if you hit all of the solar pellets from the second shot, it causes it to ignite targets. It chunks them. Like an ignition does a ton of damage, and it has an area of effect, so nearby enemies are going to take damage as well. So with the conditional finality, you're just plugging damage into, let's say, a champion, a mini boss, and just nearby thrall trying to get at you, or just dying from the ignition explosions. But remember, guys, this final perk is not going to increase your DPS. It's only going to trigger on a final blow, which is a bit weird. Like, you've already killed the target and then it's going to ignite. So why is that good? Well, basically what this is doing is it's giving a dragonfly or a firefly effect to every single one of your solar weapons. Whenever you get a kill, there's going to be an explosion. So, everything that doesn't have Firefly, well, basically now it gets Firefly. Except it kind of doesn't, because it's 10 times better. The difference between Firefly and an Ignition is that an Ignition has a massive amount of synergy within your solar builds. And so what you can do is actually spec into the amount of ignitions you're going to be creating. First of all, we have Ember of Char. Your solar ignitions spread scorch to affected targets. So as you're getting those final blows and causing ignitions, if you have nearby yellow bars that aren't going to die to those ignitions, they're now scorching and accumulating scorch stacks, which could ignite themselves, right? You also have stuff like Ember of Blistering. Defeating targets with solar ignitions grants grenade energy. Incredible, especially because you have never before this perk been able to produce ignitions so easily, other than maybe using the conditional finality, right? You also have stuff like Ember of Eruption. Your solar ignitions have increased area of effect, so they're even bigger now. And then lastly, we top things off with Ember of Wonder. Rapidly defeating multiple targets with solar ignitions creates an orb of power, so that if you're doing all of this, you're now constantly getting orbs of power, getting your super back faster, and becoming armor charged. Just incredible. Now, of course, you only have so many fragment slots, so how you want to spec into these different abilities, if you want to put an emphasis on becoming radiant, an emphasis on, scorch and scorch stacks, and benefits from being scorched, I think something I should mention here is that you have fragments like Ember of Searing, where defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite, so you have things that benefit you for scorching enemies as well. But again, regardless, no matter how you spec into these different effects, the one thing absolutely everyone is going to be clamoring for next season is good solar weapons, right? You need solar weapons to trigger the majority of those new seasonal artifact perks we talked about. So we have stuff like the Amit AR2. Like, this is a really heavily used weapon even in PvP, but you can get Ambitious Assassin and Incandescent for a very, very solid PvE role as well. Don't forget the classic here, the Callus mini tool with Threat Detector plus Incandescent. Now, Incandescent is going to cause even more Scorch for final blows. So think about this. You're causing Scorch as you're shooting the target because you're radiant. Then you get the final blow. You have an ignition going off and the incandescent trigger as well. So like everything nearby is getting decimated, like absolutely eviscerated by scorch damage and ignition damage, and you have more synergies on top of that, right? So again, incandescent is going to be absolutely insane next season. You also have just stuff like, heck, the Vex Mythoclast. The Vex Mythoclast itself is getting a huge buff. I actually did a whole video on this. I'll link it up above. But the linear fusion rifle mode of this weapon is actually getting a 200% damage increase against champions. So you're going to be cooking next season with the Vex. And also, like, it is just a really powerful, solar weapon to use. And mainly, guys, it lets you use the Rain of Fire Warlock exotic leg armor. These are insane with the new artifact perks we just looked at, because these make it so that you become radiant for getting final blows with fusion rifles and linear fusion rifles. That's right. Use the Vex Mythoclast. Every single enemy you kill, you instantly become radiant, and it keeps refreshing itself. So that means you are always radiant to cause more scorch. Like, you really don't even need, the enabler where rapid precision hits will make you radiant. You're going to be radiant so much. But yeah, that is going to be huge for activating those consistent scorch options. But if you don't have the Vex, hey, another great one, something like the Cartesian Coordinate here. Just a solar fusion rifle. It can get lead from gold for more ammo, plus Vorpal weapon. Get one kill with this, you're radiant. You don't have to do anything crazy. You get one single kill with the Rain of Fire. You are radiant. And now every Cartesian Coordinate hit, which smacks, by the way, is causing scorch on top of that. Like, it is just going to be incredible, guys. Now, as for some more great solar weapons, the Merciless. This thing got a massive buff, like somewhat recently. It absolutely collapsed. The amount of damage you can do with the Merciless, increasing its rate of fire, is absurd. And like, this thing is going to be triggering Rain of Fire, becoming radiant, doing a ton of damage. Like, that's going to be incredible. Another great one to point out here is the Lubre's Ruin. It is a solar glaive, and there's also a solar glaive that comes from the Ghost of the Deep Dungeon. Glaives are getting a massive buff next season. They're getting a whole rework. So a solar glaive, like, glaives are getting buffed and solar weapons are going to be cooking. Combine the two, you can't go wrong. This is a really great one with especially like Grave Robber, Swashbuckler. What a combo there. Soul Drinker to get some health back as well. Another one I want to point out here, the Zayuli's Bane here, guys. Such an incredible hand cannon with explosive payload plus incandescent. What a combo. Such a powerful combo. One of the best, PvE hand cannon rolls you can possibly get in the game. I think even hand cannons are getting a big PvE buff next season, potentially. I may be remembering wrong, but regardless, guys, another one to call out here, the Teraba. If you have a Teraba, the amount of damage you can do with the Terraba is actually insane. Like when you trigger the Ravenous Beast like mode, when you build up enough damage, like it just shreds. And so this causing Radiant, causing Ignition, Scorch, like you are going to be cooking with the Terraba next season. So absolutely guys, just your best solar weapons are going to be incredible next season. So, you know, start theory crafting, looking at some good solar builds. But again, like some of the craziest parts is that a lot of these you can, especially just by putting on the seasonal artifact perks and having some solar weapons, you don't necessarily have to be on a solar build to have like these insane solar benefits. You just have to be using the solar weapons. And so potentially we could see strand builds, stasis builds, like what have you, also be incredibly powerful and just be using solar weapons to get these benefits. And so guys, there you have it. That is it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.